The Bible describes multitudes of beings that have intrigued people for years. Among these are the 24 elders, a group shrouded in mystery and wonder. Beyond our understanding and perception lies a magnificent throne room in heaven, radiant with divine light and power. This extraordinary place is where the most powerful being in the universe resides. John's journey to the island of Patmos and his subsequent visions, including those of the 24 elders, is one of the most captivating episodes in the Bible. Amid the wonders of the supernatural realm, one presence stands out. A circle of 24 elders dressed in white and crowned with gold, seated on thrones around the main throne. But who are these figures? Why are they here? After addressing the 7 churches, John suddenly found himself in the very throne room of God. He saw God seated on a throne, appearing like precious stones. Surrounding this throne were 24 other thrones, and on them sat the 24 elders. These elders wore white robes with golden crowns on their heads. In this video, we will explore some of the most mysterious beings recorded in the Bible. So, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, click the like button, and watch this video until the end. The elders, along with the 4 living creatures around the throne, prostrated themselves before God, casting their crowns before him and declaring, "You are worthy, O Lord, to receive glory, honor, and power, for you have created all things, and by your will, they exist and were created." Revelation 4 verse 1. There is no place in the book of Revelation where the identities of the 24 elders are explicitly detailed. However, it is highly likely that they are representatives of the church. Some believe they might be angelic beings, but this is highly unlikely. It is clear they reign alongside Christ, as they are seated on thrones. The church's role in ruling and reigning with Christ is repeatedly emphasized in Scripture. The Greek word translated as elders in this context is never used to refer to angels. It is exclusively used for men who have reached a certain age and are capable of ruling. Since angels do not age, the term elder cannot be attributed to them. Although angels can serve dressed in white, the color white is more frequently associated with believers, symbolizing the righteousness of Christ that is attributed to us in salvation. The elders wear golden crowns, indicating that they are not angels, as angels never receive crowns and there is no evidence that they wear them. The cherubim, or living creatures, serve as a motivation for the 24 elders to engage in worship. As the cherubim worship God every hour of the day and night, the elders are seen as representatives of God's people, particularly in the Old Testament. They are adorned with the crowns of victory and have moved to the next chapter of their divine journey, having been welcomed to the place their Redeemer prepared for them. But who are these elders? They are seen as representatives of God's people, particularly from the Old Testament, celebrating their eternal victory in the divine realm. In the Old Testament, angels are referenced 108 times, and in the book of Exodus, Moses encountered angels during the Israelites wandering in the desert. But what are the wheels mentioned in the Bible? The term wheel in ancient Hebrew simply refers to wheels, but the wheels of God's throne described in Ezekiel's vision hold particular significance. In a moment of divine revelation, God opened the heavens to Ezekiel, allowing him a glimpse into a realm beyond ordinary human perception. Ezekiel's inaugural vision is one of the most challenging passages to translate in the entire Old Testament. He first recounts where he was when he saw the vision and then attempts to describe something indescribable, using similes and comparisons to convey what he witnessed. Ezekiel saw a dark, threatening cloud filled with lightning and fire approaching from the north. Within this cloud were 4 radiant beings, later identified as cherubim. Then, Ezekiel saw the wheels. These were not ordinary wheels, but something akin to the wheels of a chariot, yet more complex and awe-inspiring. To better understand, imagine a gyroscope, something that can move in any direction without needing to turn. Ezekiel was describing the indescribable. He says, "Now as I looked at the living creatures, behold, a wheel was on the ground beside each of the 4 living creatures. The appearance of the wheels and their workmanship was like sparkling topaz, and all 4 had the same form. Their appearance and workmanship were as if a wheel was within a wheel. When they moved, they went in any of their 4 directions without turning as they moved. As for their rims, they were high and impressive, and the rims of all 4 were full of eyes all around. Whenever the living creatures moved, the wheels moved with them, and when the living creatures rose from the earth, the wheels rose as well. Wherever the Spirit was about to go, they went in that direction, and the wheels rose alongside them, for the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. Ezekiel 1 verses 15 to 21. These wheels, with their dazzling appearance and ability to move in any direction without turning, symbolize the divine mobility and omnipresence of God. They moved in perfect harmony with the living creatures, embodying the spirit of these heavenly beings. Ezekiel observed that whenever the living creatures moved, the wheels moved alongside them. When they stopped, the wheels stopped, and when the creatures rose from the earth, the wheels rose with them, for the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. Ezekiel remained among the wheels and cherubim, witnessing a remarkable manifestation of God's spirit in everything that was happening. The multiple eyes that Ezekiel saw on the wheels symbolized God's omniscience, the all-seeing, all-knowing nature of God. This great book of Ezekiel begins with a vision in which the prophet receives a revelation from God, showcasing angelic figures. In this vision, God calls Ezekiel to be his spokesperson and watchman for the Hebrew exiles. This vision, one of 4 in the book, is challenging to visualize, as it expresses a sense of exceptional knowledge and intelligence. The Ophanim, or wheels, are mentioned similarly in Ezekiel 10. Ezekiel was to understand that the chariot, or throne chariot, of God was in motion. To the modern reader, this image may seem bizarre, but it's essential to remember that this is a visionary experience with surrealistic elements often prevailing over realism. Imagine a terrifying 5-ton African elephant charging towards you with its trunk extended, eyes wide, and massive legs pounding the earth. There's nothing between you and it but flat grass, and your heart races wildly. How would you escape? What would you do? Now, consider that animals far more fearsome and powerful than African elephants once roamed the earth. The Behemoth. The Behemoth is described as such a great animal in the book of Job. It all started with a wealthy man named Job, living in Uz with his extended family and vast herds. Job was upright and righteous, always striving to live a moral life, and maintained a disciplined relationship with God. God praised Job's virtues to Satan, but Satan argued that Job was righteous only because God had blessed him. Satan challenged God, saying that if he were allowed to inflict suffering on Job, Job would curse God. God permitted Satan to torment Job to test this bold claim, but he forbade Satan from taking Job's life. Job received 4 devastating reports in one day. His sheep, servants, and 10 children had all perished due to invaders, thieves, or natural disasters. Amid his suffering, Job tore his clothes and shaved his head, but in his prayers, he continued to praise God. Satan reappeared in heaven, and God gave him another chance to test Job's faith. In his despair, Job cursed the day of his birth, lamenting that life only added to his agony. He questioned why God evaluates people based on their actions when God can easily amend or forgive them. Job was perplexed about how a human being could fully satisfy the justice of God, given that God's ways are mysterious and beyond human comprehension. Job was brought to his breaking point by the ordeal. As he grappled with his suffering and tried to understand God's purpose, he realized that the divine perspective is vastly different from the human perspective. As a result of his suffering, Job becomes resentful, anxious, and terrified. He laments the apparent injustice of God, wondering why wicked people prosper while he and many other honest men suffer. Job longs to confront God and protest, but he cannot physically find him. He believes that wisdom is hidden from humanity, but resolves to pursue it by fearing God and avoiding evil. In the end, God decides to intervene. On several occasions, Job had prayed for a conversation with God, and his wish was granted. These divine communications occur amid a storm, and there is a notable touch of humor in the way God addresses Job. God reminds him that he is the creator of everything, recounting his magnificent acts of creating and sustaining the world. He asks Job if he could match such works, ending by suggesting that it's presumptuous for Job to expect an explanation from God. Job is made to feel very small in the presence of the divine. Eventually, Job responds humbly, saying, I am unworthy. How can I reply to you? I put my hand over my mouth. I spoke once, but I have no answer, twice, but I will say no more. In the second round of conversation, God shifts the focus from his role as the creator to his creatures. His speech is again laced with humor as he asks Job for his opinions on the behemoth, as if these fantastic beasts held the answers to significant life questions. God says to Job, Look now at the behemoth, which I made along with you. It eats grass like an ox. Behold, its strength is in its loins and its power in the muscles of its belly. It moves its tail like a cedar. The sinews of its thighs are tightly knit. Its bones are like tubes of bronze, and its limbs like bars of iron. It is the first of the ways of God. Only its maker can approach it with his sword. Previously, the focus was more on the mystery of animal creation, but now it has shifted to the fearsome magnificence of God's creations. The identity of the behemoth remains a topic of wonder and speculation. The behemoth is described as a great and powerful creature in the book of Job, an embodiment of the awe-inspiring nature of God's creations. Job's journey begins in the land of Uz, where he lives as a wealthy man with an extended family and vast herds. He is upright and righteous, always striving to live a moral life and maintaining a disciplined relationship with God. God praises Job's virtues to Satan, who argues that Job is righteous only because he has been blessed by God. Satan challenges God, asserting that if he were allowed to inflict suffering on Job, Job would curse God. God permits Satan to torment Job to test this claim, but forbids him from taking Job's life. Job receives 4 devastating reports in one day, each telling of the loss of his sheep, servants, and 10 children due to invaders, thieves, or natural disasters. Despite his immense suffering, Job tears his clothes and shaves his head but continues to praise God in his prayers. Satan reappears in heaven, and God allows him another chance to test Job's faith. In his despair, Job curses the day of his birth, lamenting that life only adds to his agony. He questions why God evaluates people based on their actions when he can easily amend or forgive them. Job is perplexed, wondering how a human being can fully satisfy the justice of God, considering that God's ways are mysterious and beyond human comprehension. Job's ordeal brings him to his breaking point, grappling with his suffering and striving to understand God's purpose. In the midst of his turmoil, Job is reminded of the magnificence and incomprehensibility of God's creation. The Behemoth, with its immense power and strength, serves as a testament to the divine craftsmanship and the mysteries that lie beyond human understanding. The Behemoth is one of the few biblical creatures that has sparked long-standing debates among historians. The academic community is still trying to reach a consensus on many aspects of this creature, but 2 things are certain. It was enormous and had a navel. The presence of a navel indicates it was not an egg-laying animal. This mighty beast eats grass like an ox, and its power is concentrated in its stomach muscles. God seems to take delight in describing the wonder of this extraordinary creature, highlighting its size, appetite, and behaviors along the way. The message is clear. If Job cannot compete with such a fellow creature, how could he possibly contend with the God who created the Behemoth? The Hebrew word behemoth has the same form as the plural of the Hebrew word bema, which means beast. It's possible that such a beast once roamed the earth alongside humans. But what exactly was the Behemoth? Some people think it was a hippopotamus. The hippopotamus is one of the largest, most powerful, and dangerous land animals in the world, and it was definitely known in biblical times, especially in Egypt. The Romans reduced their population because of the damage they caused to crops. Although often referred to as a river horse, the hippopotamus is actually more closely related to pigs than to horses. Its wide-open jaw presents a compelling image. Or perhaps the behemoth was an elephant. According to many biblical apologists, the Hebrew term behemoth refers to a 4-legged beast, which they believe to be an elephant. Those who favor the hippopotamus theory often point to Job 40 verse 23, which speaks of the creature's huge mouth drinking up the rushing waters of the Jordan River. Based on verse 19, it seems the creature described in Job's story was too large for the people of that time to conquer. These descriptions don't match any current animal, as throughout recorded history, humans have hunted and killed elephants and even domesticated them for various purposes, such as labor and war. When the book of Job describes the behemoth as the first of the ways of God, so powerful that only its creator can approach it with a sword, it's not an exaggeration. The behemoth's sheer size and strength made it a symbol of God's unmatched creative power. In comparison to the terrifying and uncontrollable power of the Leviathan, man's pride and grandeur seem trivial. The more humble man becomes in the presence of God, the clearer this point becomes. Neither Job nor anyone else has the right to critique God's work. The Leviathan is described as a large, fearsome aquatic creature of some kind, with monstrous ferocity and great power. The Bible portrays it as a symbol of chaos and danger, a creature so formidable that it makes human efforts to control or overcome it seem insignificant. This massive sea beast serves as a reminder of God's sovereignty and the limits of human power. The Hebrew word for Leviathan has its roots in the meaning of coiled or twisted. Isaiah 27 verse 1 speaks of the Leviathan. On that day, the Lord with his severe, great and strong sword will punish Leviathan, the swift serpent, Leviathan, the coiling serpent, and he will slay the dragon that is in the sea. This sea monster, whatever it was, had a reputation for strength and a wild, untamable nature. The Leviathan is glorified by God in the Old Testament, with several mentions that indicate it was considered a real creature. According to these passages, people knew of the Leviathan, although they kept their distance and understood it more by reputation than by direct sight. In Psalm 104 verses 25 to 26, God is praised as the creator of the Leviathan's habitat, highlighting his power and the creature's fearsome nature. To combat Job's inflated sense of his own importance, God used the Leviathan to demonstrate how small Job was in the grand scheme of things. Job 41 provides the most detailed description of the Leviathan as a real marine creature. In this chapter, God emphasizes the size, strength, and ferocity of the Leviathan. The passage reads, "Can you pull in Leviathan with a fish hook or tie down its tongue with a rope? Can you put a cord through its nose or pierce its jaw with a hook? Will it keep begging you for mercy? Will it speak to you with gentle words? Will it make an agreement with you for you to take it as your slave for life? Can you play with it as with a bird or tie it on a leash for your young girls?" This creature is first mentioned in Job 3 verse 8, where Job laments, "May those who curse days curse those who are ready to rouse Leviathan." In this context, Job refers to how sailors and fishermen cursed the fearsome creature known as the Leviathan with the same intense emotion with which he cursed the day he was born. Generally, the Leviathan is considered a mythical sea monster or dragon that terrorized sailors and fishermen. However, in the context of Job 41, God does not seem to regard the Leviathan as merely mythical. There are differing opinions on what the Leviathan represents. Some suggest it could be an ancient dinosaur, akin to a dragon, that may have survived into Job's time or remained in human memory, serving as an example for God to refer to. Others believe the Leviathan is simply a powerful crocodile. In this context, God's purpose in providing Job with this account of the Leviathan is to demonstrate how powerless Job is before this magnificent creature, and by extension, before God himself. The Leviathan serves as a humbling reminder of the vastness and might of God's creation, a testament to the limits of human strength and understanding. There is nothing Job can do to stop this powerful creature. Job stands no chance against it. The cherubim are a group of celestial beings created by God. They are the first in the angelic hierarchy to appear in the Bible, immediately after the fall of Adam and Eve, as recorded in Genesis 3. In the Garden of Eden, after Adam and Eve violated God's command not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, there was a risk that they might also take from the tree of life and live forever. As a result, they were expelled from their earthly paradise. But what would prevent Adam from returning to the garden and disobeying God again? The answer is given in Genesis 3 verse 24. "And so God banished man, and placed on the east side of the Garden of Eden the cherubim and a flaming sword that turned every way to guard the way to the tree of life." From these sources, it appears that the primary responsibility of the cherubim is to declare man's sinfulness and protect God's presence from sinful men. No matter how much Adam longed to return to the Garden of Eden, the cherubim served as a stern reminder that he had broken God's law. The high priest of Israel was allowed to enter the Holy of Holies once a year to gaze upon the mercy seat. Each time he must have felt the weight of his unworthiness, thinking, I do not belong here in the holy presence of God, for I am a sinner." The cherubim are real and powerful beings. However, in the Bible, cherubim often represent heavenly things. They were incorporated into the design of the Ark of the Covenant and the tabernacle by God's command. The cherubim described in Ezekiel 10 not only have wings and hands, but are also full of eyes and surrounded by wheels within wheels. Ezekiel paints a rather grim picture in this chapter. The cherubim did more than protect God's holiest place from those who had no right to be there. They also ensured the high priest's right to enter the holy place with blood as the mediator between the people and God. The cherubim will not deny access to the throne to even the humblest Christian. They assure us that we can come boldly before God because of Christ's work on the cross. When the veil in the temple was torn, it symbolized that the barrier between humanity and God had been removed. The book of Isaiah 14 introduces us to a being known as Lucifer. The name Lucifer literally means a lightbringer in Latin, and is translated as morning star in Hebrew. Lucifer was portrayed as a bright, resplendent, and wonderful deity. In many languages, he is associated with the planet Venus, which appears as a bright morning star. This imagery suggests a being of great beauty and brilliance, which is why the fall of Lucifer from grace is depicted as a tragic and profound event. Now, we move on to discuss Melchizedek, another significant figure in the Bible. Melchizedek, whose name means King of Righteousness, is a mysterious figure who appears in the book of Genesis. He was the king of Salem and a priest of the Most High God. Melchizedek blessed Abraham, and in return, Abraham gave him a tenth of everything he had. This encounter underscores Melchizedek's importance and foreshadows the eternal priesthood of Jesus Christ, who is said to be a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. Among the many enigmatic figures in the Bible, few are as mysterious as Melchizedek. When we first encounter him, he's living in the time of Abraham. Even his name, Melchizedek, shrouds him in an air of mystery. He makes a quiet yet impactful entry into the biblical narrative. So, who is he, and why is there so much discussion about him? Melchizedek is mentioned in both the Old and New Testaments. Our epic story begins with Abraham, a name many of us recognize. In the Bible, names aren't just descriptive, they carry authority and significance. For instance, the name God gave Adam means Ea from the earth, reflecting his creation. Names often relate to the role of the individual in the biblical narrative, such as Nabal, a foolish man whose name literally means a fool. Names can represent human hopes, divine revelations, or be used to illustrate prophecies. So, what does the name Melchizedek mean? According to Hebrews 7 verse 2, it translates to King of Righteousness, or the King is righteous. This name implies that the person bearing it is just and correct in their actions, a fitting name for a ruler who upholds justice and righteousness in their domain. Melchizedek is often used to explain the mysteries surrounding Jesus. Just as Melchizedek is described as the King of Peace, Jesus is also referred to as the King of Peace in the prophecies of Isaiah concerning the coming Messiah. The second noteworthy detail about Melchizedek, found in Genesis 14, is that he presented Abraham with bread and wine. Genesis 14 verse 18 tells us that he was a priest of the Most High God. According to the Holy Scriptures, there is only one God who is the Most High, the God whom Abraham worshipped. He alone ruled over all other deities and was the one before whom all gods should kneel. The priesthood that Melchizedek held came before the priesthood of Aaron and the Levites. Melchizedek blessed Abraham by the Most High God, acknowledging in Genesis 14 verse 20 that it was the Most High God who gave Abraham the ability to defeat his enemies. The order and mystery of Melchizedek are often used to explain Jesus, the man who had no beginning and no end. Melchizedek's name and title carry profound significance. In Hebrew, Melchi means king, and Zedek means righteousness, thus he is literally King of Righteousness. His title, the King of Salem, translates to a King of Peace. This is not merely symbolic, it provides a connection to Jesus, who is known as the Prince of Peace in Christian theology. Names in the Bible are more than mere labels. They are seen as a reflection of a person's essence or destiny. For example, when God changes Abram's name to Abraham, it signifies his destiny to be the father of many nations. In Genesis 14, we find a unique interaction between Melchizedek and Abraham. After Abraham's victory over the kings, Melchizedek meets him and offers bread and wine, a gesture loaded with symbolic meaning. This act of sharing bread and wine can be seen as a precursor to the Last Supper, drawing a line between the Old Testament and the New Testament. Melchizedek then blesses Abraham, acknowledging that his victory came from the Most High God. This blessing is significant because it indicates that Melchizedek recognized and honored the true God, establishing him as a figure of righteousness and peace. Melchizedek's priesthood is particularly intriguing because it precedes the established Levitical priesthood of Israel. Unlike the priests who came after him, Melchizedek's priesthood is presented as eternal and superior. Hebrews 7 verse 3 describes him as being without father or mother, without genealogy, without beginning of days or end of life, resembling the Son of God in this aspect. This unique priesthood points forward to Jesus, who is said to be a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. Unlike the Levitical priests who had to offer sacrifices repeatedly, Jesus' sacrifice is once for all, and his priesthood is eternal. One of the most fascinating aspects of Melchizedek is his mysterious nature, which has intrigued theologians and scholars for centuries. Unlike other biblical figures, Melchizedek's lineage and background are not detailed in the scriptures. This lack of genealogical information, no mention of father, mother, or ancestral line, sets him apart as an enigmatic figure whose priesthood is described as eternal, without beginning or end. In the New Testament, Melchizedek is referenced in the book of Hebrews, where the comparison is made between his priesthood and that of Jesus. Hebrews 6 verse 20 mentions Jesus entering as a forerunner, having become a high priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek. This suggests a priesthood that transcends time, emphasizing its perpetual nature. Hebrews 7 offers the most detailed biblical exposition on Melchizedek, focusing on a specific encounter between him and Abraham. It states, "For this Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High God, met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the kings and blessed him, and to him Abraham apportioned a tenth of everything. He is first, by translation of his name, King of Righteousness, and then he is also King of Salem, that is, King of Peace. He is without father or mother or genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but resembling the Son of God, he remains a priest forever." Hebrews 7 verses 1 to 3. This passage highlights several key aspects of Melchizedek. 1. He is both a king and a priest, carrying the titles of Ye King of Righteousness and Ye King of Peace. This dual role prefigures the dual nature of Jesus as both king and priest. 2. The text emphasizes that Melchizedek is Ye without father or mother or genealogy, Ye and having neither beginning of days nor end of life. This suggests a priesthood that is eternal, not bound by time or human lineage, much like the eternal priesthood of Christ. 3. The fact that Abraham, the revered patriarch, gave a tenth of his spoils to Melchizedek underscores the latter's greatness. Abraham's act of giving a tithe signifies his recognition of Melchizedek's superior priestly authority. The lack of genealogical detail about Melchizedek in verse 3 of Hebrews 7 is profound. In a biblical context where lineage is crucial for establishing the legitimacy and authority of figures, Melchizedek's priesthood stands out as unique and divinely instituted. His priesthood is not inherited or passed down through generations, but is depicted as a direct appointment from God, akin to the eternal priesthood of Jesus Christ. This portrayal resonates with the belief that Melchizedek was a type of Christ, a foreshadowing of the ultimate high priest who would come in the person of Jesus. The resemblance to the Son of God is significant, pointing to an archetypal priesthood that transcends human limitations and is eternal in nature. Melchizedek was the king of Salem, which is traditionally associated with Jerusalem and translates to a city of peace. This title prophetically mirrors the work of Jesus, who is seen as bringing ultimate peace between God and humanity. The city of Salem symbolizes not just a geographical location, but a spiritual state of peace and reconciliation, reflecting the peace that Jesus brings to his followers. Abraham's act of giving a tenth of everything to Melchizedek is symbolic. It demonstrates Abraham's acceptance of Melchizedek's priesthood and his recognition of Melchizedek's role as a mediator between God and man. This act also prefigures the Levitical priesthood that would later be established in Israel, as suggested by Hebrews 7 verses 9 to 10, where it implies that Abraham, the ancestor of the Levitical priests, acknowledged a greater priesthood. In contrast to Melchizedek's peaceful and priestly role, the concept of the angel of death emerges as a powerful figure in the biblical narrative, particularly in the book of Exodus. Often, people think of the angel of death in a general sense, but there is a distinction to be made with specific angels of death that appear in various contexts. During the Exodus, God sent an angel to bring death to the firstborn in Egypt as a final plague, prompting Pharaoh to release the enslaved Israelites. This angelic being, often referred to as the angel of death, acted as an instrument of divine judgment, demonstrating God's power and determination to free his people. This notion contrasts sharply with Melchizedek's role as a priest of the Most High God, emphasizing the diverse functions of celestial beings in the biblical narrative, from agents of peace and blessing to executors of divine justice, particularly in contexts where divine judgment is pronounced. The destroying angel is not a specific individual angel, but rather a title given to an angelic entity tasked with carrying out God's judgment. This term underscores the severity and finality of the judgments executed, such as during the last plague in Egypt, where the firstborn of all Egyptian households were struck down. The concept of the angel of death appears prominently in the narrative of the Exodus, specifically during the final plague unleashed upon Egypt. In Exodus 11 and 12, God instructs Moses about the impending judgment. Moses announces that at midnight, the firstborn throughout Egypt, from Pharaoh to the lowest servant, and even the firstborn of cattle, would die. Exodus 12 verses 29 to 30. At midnight, the Lord struck down all the firstborn in Egypt, causing a great cry of mourning throughout the land. This event marks a pivotal moment in biblical history, where the angel of death serves as the instrument through which God's judgment is executed. It illustrates God's ultimate authority and the consequences of disobedience and oppression. The angel of death symbolizes not just physical death, but also the spiritual and moral consequences of sin. It emphasizes God's role as both a just judge and a merciful deliverer. In the case of the Passover event, the angel's role was to distinguish between the houses of the Egyptians and the Israelites. Those protected by the blood of the Passover lamb were spared from the judgment. From a theological perspective, the angel of death underscores several important themes. 1. Divine judgment. It highlights God's sovereignty over life and death and his role as the ultimate arbiter of justice. 2. Redemption and salvation. The Passover event prefigures Christ's sacrificial death as the ultimate Passover lamb whose blood protects believers from eternal judgment. 3. Human responsibility. It underscores the importance of faith and obedience in God's commands for protection and deliverance. Seraphim. These celestial beings are described as having 6 wings each, and their role primarily involves worshiping and serving God. Here are some key insights into seraphim based on the biblical passage in Isaiah 6. 1. Appearance. Seraphim are depicted as having 6 wings. 2 wings cover their faces, 2 cover their feet, and with 2 they fly, Isaiah 6 verse 2. 2. Purpose. Their primary function is to worship and glorify God continually. In Isaiah's vision, they call out to one another, declaring, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of His glory. Isaiah 6 verse 3. 3. Symbolism. The name Seraphim comes from the Hebrew word Seraph, which means burning or fiery. This suggests they are associated with intense brightness or divine purity in their worship of God. The passage in Isaiah 6 provides a vivid description of Isaiah's vision of God's heavenly throne room. It highlights the majesty and holiness of God, surrounded by seraphim who proclaim His glory. The vision also emphasizes the awe-inspiring nature of God's presence and the humility it evokes in those who witness it. Worship and adoration. Seraphim continuously praise God for His holiness and glory. Their worship underscores the transcendent nature of God and His sovereignty over all creation. Agents of purification. In Isaiah 6 verses 6 to 7, one of the seraphim touches Isaiah's lips with a burning coal, symbolizing purification and forgiveness of sins. This act prepares Isaiah for his prophetic ministry and demonstrates the role of seraphim as agents of divine purification. Awe and reverence. He became acutely aware of his own unworthiness and sinfulness in the presence of the holy God. The seraphim's proclamation of a holy, holy, holy underscores the infinite and sacred nature of God's glory, which transcends all realms, from heaven to earth. 1. Appearance. Described by Isaiah as having 6 wings each, seraphim cover their faces and feet with 2 wings, and use the remaining 2 wings for flight, Isaiah 6 verse 2. Their appearance includes human-like features such as faces, hands, and voices, indicating their distinct role as heavenly beings. 2. Symbolism of fire. The term seraphim derives from the Hebrew root saraf, meaning to burn or to consume with fire. This could symbolize their intense devotion and purity in serving God, as well as their role in purification. 3. Agents of purification. In Isaiah's vision, one of the seraphim purifies his lips with a burning coal, signifying forgiveness and readiness for Isaiah's prophetic ministry, Isaiah 6 verses 6 to 7. This act highlights their role as instruments of divine purification and sanctification. Proclamation of holiness. The repeated declaration of a holy, holy, holy by the seraphim emphasizes the sacredness and otherness of God. This threefold repetition is significant, as it underscores the complete, perfect holiness of God in a unique manner, Isaiah 6 verse 3, Revelation 4 verse 8. Divine worship and reverence. Seraphim continually worship and serve God in His heavenly court, illustrating their close proximity to His throne and their role in glorifying Him. Their worship sets an example of reverence and awe before God's presence. Implications for humanity. The seraphim's reverence for God serves as a reminder of human frailty and sinfulness in contrast to God's holiness. It encourages humility and reverence in approaching God, acknowledging His supreme majesty and purity. Spirits. Demons are indeed personal beings with distinct personalities and attributes. Here's a summary of their characteristics and their interactions as discussed. 1. Personal attributes. Demons exhibit personal attributes such as using personal pronouns, I, me, in conversation. Both Christ and demons address each other using personal pronouns, indicating their individuality. Mark 1 verses 24 to 25. Luke 8 verse 30. 2. Demonic possession. Demonic possession occurs when a demonic spirit inhabits and influences a human body, manifesting through the host's personality. The possessed person's actions are influenced by the demonic spirit within them. 3. Origin and motivation. Demons are fallen angels who rebelled against God. They seek to harm humanity and oppose God's purposes. Their actions include causing physical and spiritual harm, leading people into deception, and attacking God's image in humanity. 4. Interaction with Jesus. Demons recognized Jesus' authority and power, often speaking directly to Him. They begged Him not to send them into the abyss, indicating their fear and awareness of impending judgment. Luke 8 verse 31. 5. Names and identification. Demons often identify themselves by specific names or titles, such as Legion, to signify their collective presence or to evade direct identification. Mark 5 verse 9. Jesus' inquiry into their name helped to understand the extent of possession and the nature of the spiritual conflict. Deception and influence. Demons deceive through occult practices, spiritism, and other means, drawing people away from God's truth and into spiritual danger. They exploit vulnerabilities and weaknesses, seeking to control and harm. Spiritual warfare. Christians are engaged in spiritual warfare against demonic forces, armed with the authority of Christ's victory on the cross. While demons can deceive and tempt, believers are empowered to resist through faith and prayer, Ephesians 6 verse 12. James 4 verse 7. Ultimate defeat. Jesus' death and resurrection disarmed the powers of darkness, triumphing over them openly, Colossians 2 verse 15. Though active, demons' ultimate fate is confinement in the abyss, symbolizing their ultimate defeat and judgment, Revelation 20 verse 10. His own splendor and wisdom, desiring to exalt himself above God. This pride led to his rebellion against God's authority and his expulsion from heaven. Here's a summary of Lucifer's story and the concept of pride as the original sin. 1. Identity and position. Lucifer, also known as the morning star or lightbringer, was originally a high-ranking angel in God's heavenly hierarchy. He was among the chief angels alongside Michael and Gabriel, serving in God's heavenly court, Isaiah 14 verse 12. 2. Pride and rebellion. Lucifer's downfall began with his own pride. He became enamored with his own beauty, wisdom, and status, desiring to elevate himself above God. His pride led to rebellion, as he sought to establish his own kingdom and authority contrary to God's will, Isaiah 14 verses 13 to 14. 3. Expulsion from heaven. Lucifer's rebellion resulted in his expulsion from the Mount of God, symbolizing his removal from God's presence and authority. He was cast down from heaven, losing his privileged position and experiencing the consequences of his disobedience, Isaiah 14 verse 15. Nature of pride. Pride is considered the original sin because it was the root of Lucifer's rebellion. It is an excessive belief in one's own abilities or qualities, often leading to arrogance, disobedience, and defiance against rightful authority. Impact of pride. Lucifer's pride led to his fall and became the source of sin in the universe. This same sin of pride continues to manifest in humanity, causing divisions, conflicts, and rebellion against God's authority. Spiritual lesson. The story of Lucifer's fall serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of pride. It highlights the importance of humility and submission to God's will, recognizing his authority and sovereignty over all creation. Modern relevance. Pride remains a pervasive and dangerous sin that can affect individuals, organizations, and societies. It blinds people to their own faults, fosters division, and undermines relationships. Spiritual warfare. Christians are called to resist pride and embrace humility, following Christ's example of servanthood and obedience. Through humility, believers can avoid the pitfalls of pride and live in harmony with God's purposes. Redemption through Christ. Jesus Christ, through his sacrificial death and resurrection, offers forgiveness and transformation to those who repent of their sins, including pride. By embracing Christ's humility and grace, believers can overcome the effects of sin and live in obedience to God. The passage delves deep into the theological implications surrounding Lucifer's fall from grace and his transformation into Satan, as well as the ongoing spiritual conflict between good and evil. Here's a structured summary of the key points discussed. 1. Origin and identity. Lucifer, initially a high-ranking angel known as the morning star or lightbringer, held significant beauty, wisdom, and authority bestowed by God. 2. Pride and rebellion. Lucifer's downfall stemmed from his pride. He desired to elevate himself to the level of God, leading to his rebellion against God's authority, Isaiah 14 verses 12 to 15. 3. Consequences. Lucifer's rebellion resulted in his expulsion from heaven, along with a third of the angels who followed him in his defiance against God. 1. Motivation. Satan harbors a deep-seated enmity towards humanity. His primary objective is to tarnish and distort the image of God reflected in humans. 2. Strategies. Satan seeks to corrupt and deceive humanity, aiming to weaken faith, compromise moral integrity, and lead people away from God and the truth of the gospel. 1. Intervention. God responded to Satan's rebellion by sending Jesus Christ, who perfectly embodies God's image, to redeem and restore humanity. 2. Salvation through Christ. Through Christ's life, death, and resurrection, there is salvation and the opportunity for humanity to be transformed into the image of God's Son. 3. Spiritual conflict. The ongoing battle between good God and evil Satan is central to the biblical narrative, emphasizing the importance of faithfulness to God and resistance against Satan's temptations. The passage underscores the theological significance of Lucifer's fall, Satan's ongoing opposition to God and humanity, and the ultimate victory secured through Christ. It encourages readers to remain steadfast in faith, resist deception, and embrace the transformative power of Christ's redemption. The narrative serves as a reminder of the spiritual warfare that believers face and the assurance of victory through Christ. If you found this summary helpful or wish to discuss further, feel free to share your thoughts.